Hello, kids, and welcome to August's edition of the Storytelling Sessions by us, the volunteers at the Goodall Institute right here in Singapore. Thank you once again for joining us this month, and we've been doing it for quite a while now, and I'm sure you've got used to who I am presenting the stories. I'm Safari Sid, as always, and I'm delighted to be hosting this month's session for all of you. And once again, it's another great session, and I really hope you're going to enjoy it because we have three fantastic stories coming up for you today. Now, who of you kids remember who Dr. Jane Goodall is? You know, Dr. Jane is now 88 years old, and it was all the way back in 1960. That was 62 years ago. Can you even imagine how long ago that was? Can you imagine what the world might have been like 62 years ago? That's probably older than most of your mummies and daddies, maybe even as old as your grandparents. That's when Dr. Jane went out to Africa. Now, do you know, kids, Africa is a very large continent full of lots and lots of wild spaces and wild animals, as well as hustling and bustling cities like Singapore. But what we're here to talk to you about is protecting and looking after these wonderful wild spaces. And that's exactly why Dr. Jane went all the way out to Africa. When she was just in her very early 20s, she flew all the way out there and traveled by boat for hours and hours along the world's longest lake. Does any of you know what the world's longest lake is called? Well, it's called Lake Tanganyika. And it's in a country in the eastern part of Africa called Tanzania. Now, Tanzania is home to many wonderful national parks. You might have heard of the Serengeti National Park, where you have lions and leopards and cheetahs and big elephants and tall giraffes and amazing zebras, amongst many, many, many other wonderful animals out there. But Dr. Jane went to a small little park called Gombe Stream National Park, and it lies on the banks of Lake Tanganyika. Now, after traveling for a very long time, she got out there to study one very special creature. Do any of you know what she was out there studying? Anybody at all? Well, she was there to study one of our very close relatives, and that, kids, is the chimpanzee. Do you know we are very closely related to them? As a matter of fact, we share over 98% of our DNA with them. So they're so close to us. Now, she went out there to understand what it's like for them to live in the wild. How do they communicate with each other? How do they talk to each other? What kind of tools do they use? And what kind of social systems and families that they live in? How do they find food? And so many other things. And Dr. Jane spent around 60 years living and learning about them. And she still does today. And she spends a lot of time now traveling all over the world to teach all of us, people like ourselves at the Jane Goodall Institute, people like yourselves tuning in to watch and learn about the stories and to learn about these amazing creatures and wildlife and how we should protect them as a whole. Now, she learnt about how they communicate with each other, how they live in families, how they play with each other, just like how we play. That she learnt about how they use tools, and this was really important because it proved that they are a form of intelligent life, just like us. And just like us, they use tools to eat with. For example, they use sticks like how we use chopsticks or how we use knives and forks. They play with each other as a form of learning, just like what we do at school. They even have fights between different bands and different troops of chimpanzees, just like how sadly we have wars in different countries as well. So they're very, very similar to us. And now what's very important is for us to learn how to protect them amongst many other endangered species, not just in Africa, but across the world. We have endangered species right here in Singapore. We actually have 3 primate species here in Singapore. One of them is the highly endangered Raffles banded langurs. And when I say endangered, it's because we have only around 67 of them left in the wild here in Singapore. So we need to look after them and protect them. Have you seen a Raffles-banded langur? You might have. They are in the wild spaces here, maybe in the Thompson area or in McRitchie, maybe even Bukitima, but you have to keep your eyes peeled. Now, one of the other primates I'm sure you would have seen around, because they don't just live in the forests, they are forest edge dwellers. So they sometimes venture into our suburban areas, maybe near your homes, near your housing estates, or near your houses and your homes. They are the long-tailed macaques. They're a bit cheeky because sometimes they try to get into our bins or to steal food from us. And you have to be very careful, kids, because you don't want to feed the monkeys. It's not good for them. The food will make them really sick. And there's plenty of lovely food in the wild for them to be able to forage on. And the third primate that we have here in Singapore is the Sunda slow loris. They are very hard to find because they're nocturnal. Nocturnal means they only come out in the nighttime and they sleep during the daytime. But they're lovely, cute little primates with big, big eyes to help them see in the nighttime. Now, kids, now that you know a little bit more about the wildlife and the primates in Singapore and about our founder, Dr. Jane Goodall, it's time to get started with our stories. So the very first story we have for you is going to be told by one of our very own storytellers, Jaya. Can we give Jaya a round of applause, please, to get her on stage and tell our story? You're going to like it. It's called Have You Been to Ubin? And it's by Raffles Ecology Literacy Program. And once again, it's going to be told to you by Jaya. So I hope you enjoy the story.
Hi, I'm Jaya here. And today I want to tell you a story about Pulau Ubin. Have you been to Pulau Ubin? The story is written by the Raffles Ecological Literacy Program. And this is about a little boy, Lloyd, who is going to Ubin to visit his grandfather. The adventure begins. He was finally at Pulau Ubin and he says, finally here. So as the boat docked at the jetty, Lloyd leapt up excitedly. He had arrived at Pulau Ubin at last. His grandfather, who lives on the island, had promised to take him on an adventure. As he walked into the village, a map caught his eye. What is that bright yellow piece of paper stuck on it? Curious, Lloyd skipped over to it. Hey, it's a note from Grandpa. Where does he want me to go? Lloyd read the note, and the note actually said, I'm sorry, something cropped up at the last moment. Why don't you explore the secret garden first? I'll meet you at my house later. So Lloyd walked along the sensory trail towards the secret garden. Along the way, he saw many exotic plants and animals and drew them in his sketchbook. Suddenly, out of the corner of his eye, he noticed a big black and white bird. It looked lost. Curious, Lloyd whipped out a book guide from his bag to identify it. Just then, the bird spoke. Hi, I'm Tomo. I'm lost. Will you help me find my way home? So Lloyd walked with Tomo and they set off on their journey. Before long, they passed by a beach where they heard a cry for help. Surprised, Lloyd walked towards the sound, only to discover a horseshoe crab entangled in a mess of abandoned nets. Why can't people be more responsible? This litter not only pollutes the scenic landscape, but also harms animals. I can't leave this place as it is. Then after cleaning up the litter, they continued on their journey. Soon, they reached a three-way fork in the path. Oh look, Tomo exclaimed, animal tracks. Mr. Horseshoe Crab said that the wild boar will lead us in the right direction. But which set of tracks belong to the wild boar? Mused Lloyd. So, following the wild boar's tracks, they reach a quarry with shimmering blue water and many birds nearby. I didn't know there were lakes in Pulau Ubin, exclaimed Lloyd. No, silly, it's a granite quarry. Pulau Ubin actually means Granite Island in Malay. From the 1800s to the 1999, granite rock was mined to supply rock for the construction of buildings and roads like the Johor-Singapore Causeway and Horsburgh Lighthouse, replied Tomo. Oh look, what's that? Tomo exclaimed. A wooden box on the ground caught his eye. Picking it up, Lloyd realized that the box contained some rock samples. However, the text containing details of each rock were tangled up. Lloyd and Tomo continued on their journey until they reached a forest. As they entered, Lloyd nearly walked straight into a web. Down came a tiny brown spider. Hey there! Watch where you are walking. I'm the amazing Peter, and I was about to make my move on Mary Jane. Sorry, Lloyd apologized. Do you know where the hornbill's nest is? My friend Tomo is trying to get home. I'm not sure. You may want to ask for more directions at the stall outside this forest. But before you leave, could you do me a favor, please? Replied Peter the spider. Grateful for their help, Peter the spider gave Lloyd and Tomo directions out of the forest to the small sheltered stall. Lloyd bought himself a drink while Tomo took a sip from the river. Did you know the place looks different at different times of the day? It is low tide now. Here is a photo where it is at high tide. Can you spot the differences? Amma, the stall owner, asked. Impressed by their keen sense of observation, Amma praised the duo generously. The pair continued on their way and reached a clearing. This place looks incredibly familiar, Tomo cried excitedly. My home must be really close. It is somewhere high up but hidden in the trees. Yes, that's my home, exclaimed Tomo delightfully. I'm home at last. Thank you so much, Lloyd. As Tomo flew up and away into his nest, high up into the tree, Lloyd felt both happy and sad at the same time. Just as he was about to leave, he saw Tomo wave a final goodbye from inside the nest. With that, Lloyd turned to leave, happy for having made a very special friend with whom he had traveled a very unusual journey together. And that's the end of the story. Lloyd enters his grandpa's home and he meets his grandpa just outside the gate. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Wasn't that a great story, kids? Didn't Jaya do a brilliant job of telling us this great story by the Raffles Ecology Literacy Program? I hope you enjoyed it. Can we give Jaya a round of applause, please? Because she did such a good job. Yay. Okay, well, who's ready for the next story? Because the next story is actually an animation. So it's a cartoon that's been put together by our wonderful friends at Lasalle College of the Arts. You must have seen a few of their cartoons before in some of our previous programs. And here today, we have for you a story called A Long Way from Home. So please enjoy the next story.
This creature sitting in a cage in someone's living room is called a slow loris. As its name implies, it does move rather slowly, and a lot of people find it adorable. However, a cage in a person's living room is the last place that a slow loris should be in. The Sunda slow loris is one of the 3 primates native to Singapore's rainforests. It is nocturnal, foraging for tree sap or nectar, as well as as little shoots and insects. Other than their large eyes that see in the dark, they are also known for being venomous. Since they are only active at night, their population is difficult to track. However, they are considered critically endangered by local wildlife agencies, with their homes being cut down for urban development. What's worse, they are also poached for the illegal pet trade. Their eyes and endearing demeanor fetch handsome profits in the exotic pet market. In order to catch them, poachers often intrude their homes and shine torchlights at them, permanently damaging their eyes. To protect their would-be owners from venomous bites, the loris's canines are usually filed down, or even forcefully removed without anesthesia. A truly agonizing experience for the loris. Without their one and only way to defend themselves, rescued lorises of such cases cannot be returned to the wild. At worst, they could die from infections or from being unable to eat. While poaching hasn't been recorded in Singapore, cases of illegal ownership of lorises have been caught here. Offenders can be fined up to $50,000 and face up to 2 years in prison. In the best case scenario, if a loris gets rescued from illegal ownership or sale, it can be released back into the forest if they are native to Singapore after a checkup. Species of slow loris that were imported have to be housed with Wildlife Reserves Singapore. Without their canines, they would need to find a more permanent home than WRS. Even if they do get released into the wild, a slow loris should never have to go through the emotional distress of being poached and sold as a pet. They are wild animals that should remain in the wild. So, how can you help? If you learn of any illegally owned or sold exotic animals, you can call the Acres Wildlife Rescue Hotline. You can also donate to Acres to help fund their rescue efforts. With your help, the slow loris can stay in its home in peace.
That was great, wasn't it? Kids, did you enjoy A Long Way from Home by the students of Lasalle College of the Arts? Wasn't it really nice of them to put this amazing story together for us? Can we give them a round of applause to say thank you very much for the story? And there's many more of them coming up. You just have to tune in every month and you'll get to see all the cartoons and animations and stories that we've been putting together for you. Now, kids, the students of Lasalle College of the Arts are studying things like animation and cartoons and how to make videos and how to tell stories. Kids, I'm sure every one of you has a very interesting story to tell. And you know what? We at the Jaya and Goodall Institute here in Singapore would love to hear some of those stories. Maybe you've told a story in a cartoon format. Maybe you've drawn a picture, maybe you've got a poem, or maybe you've actually filmed something and put a story together like that. It could be about the otters that you've seen around in Singapore, or maybe some of the wonderful birds that we hear chirping and flying around the wonderful skies. It could be about some of the primates that you've seen. We would love to hear those stories. And hey, if you send them in to us, we might even be able to show them on this, our storytelling session, for you and for so many others all over the world to enjoy. Now, to submit your stories to us, just ask your mummies and daddies to send us an email or to find us on Facebook or Instagram, or to pop onto our website, and they'll be able to see how to submit these amazing stories to us. Now, mummies and daddies, you know, it's not just for the kids. We'd love to hear stories from you too. If you have any stories that you'd like to share with us, you're very much open to be featured on our storytelling sessions. You can also join us as a volunteer. Come along and tell stories like what Jaya did, or come and host some of these sessions with me, or instead of me, maybe. There's lots and lots of ways for you to volunteer. You can come along and do monkey walks, monkey talks with us. We do lots of nature guides through some of our wonderful wild spaces here in Singapore. And there's lots of ways that you can get involved. You can help us with our social media or be part of the storytelling team, like the amazing people behind the scenes, like Connell and Tanya and the many other people that help us. And so we'd love to have you as a part of a volunteer program here at the Jane Goodall Institute. Now, talking of telling stories, it's Dr. Jane that always tells us it's so important to tell stories, whether it's about the stars, whether it's about history, or whether it's about wildlife. She believes that one of the best ways for us to learn and to remember things is by telling stories. So who better to tell the next story than the amazing Dr. Jane Goodall herself? So she's going to be telling us a story today called Elephant Family. And kids, I hope you really enjoy the story by the amazing Dr. Jane Goodall.
Hello, this is Dr. Jane again, and selecting from these little books, I chose The Elephant Family, and the one I'm going to read to you today is about elephants because I've always loved elephants. And so here we go, The Elephant Family by Jane Goodall. Actually, my husband Hugo took quite a few of these photographs, and so it's truly amazing to see how an elephant can destroy a whole tree. This huge female is called Mama. She reaches high up with her trunk, curls it around a branch and pulls. Crack, she pulls it down. Nearby, some of her family work on another tree. An elephant can even knock a big tree over just by pushing with his head. That's how strong they are. Mama makes a rumbling sound of pleasure. Winding her trunk around a branch, she strips off the leaves and pops them into her mouth. Soon other elephants come to share the leaves. None of them could reach them before. They're Mama's sisters and aunts, and her eldest daughter. Mama is the leader of this family group. One of the females, Hazel, has twin sons named Horace and Henry. They stay close to their mother as she feeds. Horace curls his trunk back out of the way and suckles from one of the two teats between Hazel's front legs. It's not often that twin elephants are born, so we're observing this pair very carefully. Two of the Tanzanian park rangers are following these elephants almost every day, so we learn more and more about them as individuals because they're all different. The elephants feed peacefully until a 9-year-old male named Oscar tries to join in. One of the females threatens him, playfully really, tossing her head and trunk and flapping her huge ears. He stands his ground, so she charges at him, trumpeting. Oscar runs off. He stops and watches the females for a while, then chases after a bird. When Oscar's about 13, he'll leave his family group and join some adult males. The big males only travel with family groups when one of the females is ready to start a baby. The elephants move towards a waterhole. They love water. They find 5 big males already there. One of them is the oldest elephant I've ever seen. His name is Kibiongo. His teeth are worn away, his tusks as well. His ears have drooped, and his skin has fallen in wrinkles around his ankles. His companions often help him. Sometimes they hold down branches so he can feed off the soft leaves at the end. He's not strong enough anymore to get them for himself. I loved Kibiongo. Elephants always try to help companions who are very old or sick or wounded. They grieve when a group member dies and cover the body with branches and earth. They're very intelligent, and their feelings, happiness, sadness, fear, despair, grief, they're so much like ours. Kipiongo and the other males greet the females, gently touching their mouths and behind their ears with their trunks. And then the elephants really start to enjoy themselves. They suck up water and squirt it into their mouths. They lie down in the mud and cover their skins. They squirt water over themselves. The little ones play, charging about with outstretched ears and trumpeting loudly. Elephants need water. If you see them in a zoo where there's no water, you tell somebody about it. Kipiongo and his friends soon leave, gleaming with wet black mud. Mama and her family rest in the shade. The little ones suckle, then stretch out with some of the adults standing around protectively. One of the females rests her trunk over her tusks. I love to see that. In the late afternoon, they move on. They travel slowly because there's one very tiny baby, only a week old. He can't go very fast. He even trips over his own trunk. He hasn't learned how to control it properly. They all pause once to feed on the dry grass or to drink water from another water hole. In the old days, when the elephants roamed for miles and miles, the damage they did to the trees didn't matter much. There were many more trees, and slowly new ones grew. Today it's different. There are so many people. There is less and less room for the elephants. When they kill the trees where they live, there's nowhere else for them to go. In the cool of the evening, the elephants stop to feed again. Another family group appears, moving silently on their huge feet. The leaders of the two groups greet, twining their trunks. There are many more greetings. Oscar charges an elephant of the same age from the other group. They trumpet loudly, and there's a clashing of little tusks. Then Oscar, who's a bit bigger, chases the other away, very proud of himself. Gradually they calm down. The twins suckle again. The tiny baby keeps very close to his mother, often standing right underneath her. It's very peaceful. When I drive away, they're all feeding quietly together, dark shadows in the last light of evening. Elephants need all the help we can give them. They're poached for their tusks, they're shot, and they're so beautiful, so wonderful. Such gentle giants, such great personalities. I hope you'll help us to help them. Thank you.
Wow, wasn't that inspiring? Isn't it so great to hear how masterful Dr. Jane is, even in her late 80s, telling us such amazing stories? And wasn't it wonderful and so nice to hear about the elephant family? I hope you enjoyed that story by Dr. Jane. And can we give her a round of applause, please, kids? Wasn't that an incredible story? Can you see how she inspires us to tell stories? I hope she's inspired you to tell us some stories as well. We can't wait to hear some of them, as we said before, and have them featured on one of our storytelling sessions. So please do ask your mummies and daddies to submit them to us, because we'd love to see and hear from you. Now, mummies and daddies, I mentioned before, we'd love to have you as volunteers, but there are other ways you can get involved with the Jane Goodall Institute in Singapore. Of course, we are a charitable organization. We are completely run by volunteers, all of us here and behind the scenes, not just in the storytelling program, but also in all the other programs that we run, from citizen science projects all the way to all the research that we do and other activities and events that we run. We're all volunteers, and we'd love to have you join us to be a volunteer as well. But of course, as a charitable organization as well, we do always look for donations. Now, it could be you as an individual that wants to donate towards the cause, or it could be as a corporate. When it comes to corporates, we do events as well, storytelling sessions and nature walks and many other talks and other education programs for your corporates. And of course, we are always delighted with any generosity from your company, organization, or even you as an individual, which helps us to keep going as a charity. So please do contact us for more information on how you might be able to donate and help us drive this cause further. Now, kids, thank you so much for joining us this time for August's session of the storytelling sessions here by us, the Jane Goodall Institute in Singapore. We are looking forward to seeing you in our September session, and we'll have another whole load of exciting stories for all of you. So once again, thank you all very, very much. I am Safari Sid, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye.